Welcome to the Upshot, Multi-World Disc Golf's podcast about the latest in the disc golf world. I'm the editor, Charlie Eisenhood. Joining me, Josh Mansfield. It's Thursday, February 20th. We missed you Tuesday. Sorry, everybody. But we are so close to the start of the season that hopefully you'll forgive us. Josh, how has your week been? I feel like I haven't seen you in a year.
It was good. Went to a lot of hockey games down in Utah. So that was a good time.
Did you go to Utah Hockey Club?
No, we've gone to several of theirs. We went to the ECHL games, which is, like the AA baseball essentially level. Idaho traveled down to Utah to play the Boise Steelheads, so we went and watched them.
I got to say, I'm very fired up for USA Canada conclusion of the all-star break and NHL thing tonight. I can't remember the last time I was like, I gotta watch this hockey game. But I listen, I'm a big NBA fan, as you know, and the all-star weekend was so bad,
horrible, and
the NHL's all-star break has been so good that I'm reconsidering whether I should even watch NBA regular season basketball anymore. People taking breaks, they don't care. They do the all-star, they're going through the motions. I'm like, what the hell are we doing here, man? They're killing each other in the USA-Canada match.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's like a blood sport out there, and it's all-star break. What in the world, dude? It's incredible to me.
Yeah, it's an exciting tournament. It's a lot of fun. It does such a nice job of, and I think you get a big benefit from the fact that the NHL very much is an international player base. Right. So you can put together and field 4 competitive teams from 4 different countries. And it's going to be exciting tonight. That's for sure.
Well, when Missy Gannon and Evelina Salonen go to blows before the start of the World Games, World Games about to be super hype. It's the Gannons representing the U.S., we've got Kristen and Silver representing Estonia. We know Evelina's in for Finland. I did confirm Nicholas Antila is out.
Oh,
he will not be competing for Finland.
That's too bad.
That's a disappointment, man. I don't know if he can still reconsider, but Nicholas, if you're listening, man, why not just go? I think ask the Finland Disc Association to pay for your flights and make it work, because don't you want to see your country win? And he's significantly the best Finnish player, right?
I think that Nicholas playing is the key to having a rival to the US. Silver and Kristen are good, but Silver is just not on the same level anymore.
Yeah, I hear that.
Right. Kristen, but I don't know what the scoring format's right? And so it's difficult to know if Kristen's going to be able to carry that team significantly enough against Gannon and Missy.
I mean, look, you've got Lauri Lehtinen, 1032, Juna Heinonen, 1031, Ani Arminen, I think it's Daniel Davidson? Yes. And then Vaino Makala. Those are kind of your high-tier pros. And then you have some guys down in the 1020s. So they're still going to have a good player out there. I am concerned, though, that, without it being Nicholas, that it's going to be tough to beat the U.S.
Yeah. Yep.
Anyway, I'm still super excited. I think it's going to be awesome.
So hyped.
Well, we got a great show today. We got a couple interviews coming up. First, we're going to talk with Nate Heinold, who, of course, wears a lot of hats. Most notably coming up, he is the TD for the Supreme Flight Open, which kicks off the tour next week. So we'll talk to him about that, about his PDGA Board of Directors position, about what's going on with Ledgestone, how the industry's slowdown has affected him, and a bunch more. And then a little bit later on, we will talk with former Upshot co-host Steve Hill, former Multi-World Disc Golf editor, who's now at UDisc, has been on many times, of course. And their brand new UDisc growth report is out for 2025. So interesting. You can go right now, udisc.com/growth. Check it out. I would say that it paints a much rosier picture than we're hearing from pretty much everybody else. So I'm definitely going to be interested to talk to Steve about why he thinks that is. So big show. We're rocking and rolling. Josh, let's take a quick break. When we come back, Nate Heinold joins us right here on the Upshot. The Upshot is presented by Pound Disc Golf, makers of the best bags in the sport. Well, guess what? Brand new Octothorpes available now. You can make a custom Octothorpe with the brand new 2025 design right now at pounddiscgolf.com. Stock Octothorpes and Octohulls will be available along with new style Octo Rainflies, Octo Caddies, and Octo Inserts. So stay tuned and get ready for stock orders on brand new Octothorpes at pounddiscgolf.com. Joining us now on the Upshot is Ledgestone TD, 2024 Worlds TD, 2026 Worlds TD, PDGA Board President, other tournaments TDing, including next week's Supreme Flight Open, which starts in just over 1 week from today. Nate Heinold. Nate, welcome back to the program.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Always good to have you on. It's been a crazy off season, and we're here. Like, the season is about to restart with the Supreme Flight Open. You're kicking things off as the first TD of the season. How are you feeling about the outlook here for that tournament and 2025?
I mean, this tournament's going to be great. The weather looks favorable. The course has had some improvements. The biggest improvement people will see are the tee pads. They installed X-Step Pro tee pads, which are the same that we used at Ivy Hill, the same that we're going to be installing here in a month at New London, actually. And so pretty excited for that. I think we have some new things we're adding for the event, but pretty excited to get down to Brooksville.
This, Florida event has become now our new kickoff event, 2 years running. What do you think is the perks of having this kind of start in the East rather than what we've traditionally done, and how do you like, in terms of the kind of continuity of the tour, using Florida as our kickoff point?
I mean, I think back from the beginning, when it was Steve and I talking about this, Steve's original vision was cut costs for players. And I think Jeff has now really done the best possible job to make the tour make sense geographically. And so this start in the old start in the West just didn't make a lot of sense to start there in February, go back, and then go back to the West Coast a couple of months later. So starting in Florida, where a lot of players like to be right now because of the weather and they can play and train. I think that, I mean, I've already heard from some players that have been there for a few weeks. And so I think that it makes a lot of sense.
So I didn't unmute my mic because I was writing down all the topics that I wanted to make sure we hit today. As you jogged some in my mind, as you said a couple things already. So Supreme Flight Open, chess.com is still involved a little bit, right? Even though they're not the title sponsor this year.
That's correct. They'll be there. They're doing a big players dinner. They're a sponsor of the event. They'll have staff there, chess tournament. So they are still involved. Yes. What else can we expect from this tournament? Like, is it going to feel different from last year in any way, or is this, pretty much business as usual? I think it's business as usual. I was fully anticipating a decline in spectators, but DGPT gave me the update yesterday that they are trending to last year's numbers, which I'm pleasantly surprised. I do think, look, the players will see it's different. I mean, the tee pads, I feel like last year, between the rain and the clay and the quality of the pad, it seemed like it was not a great situation. And so the players will notice the tee pads, but to the spectators, I don't, they won't notice a lot. We have a few improvements on the ground for viewing opportunities, but for the most part, it'll feel similar to last year.
You run what are some of the largest events in the sport. You ran Worlds last year. You're running Worlds next year. Ledgestone is the largest non-major event year over year in the Disc Golf Pro Tour. You have D-Glow, which is also a DGPT playoff or Elite Plus, depending kind of on the which one.
It's an Elite Plus this year.
It's Elite Plus. Okay, it does go back and forth. Okay, and now obviously being a part of Supreme Flight Open, I know that a big part of Ledgestone is the amateur side. But do you, when you look at things like D-Glow and SFO, is your goal to say like, man, I want to get these events to the same caliber that Ledgestone is, or do you think Ledgestone will always stand a little bit apart?
I mean, for D-Glow, we took that over and it was about 250 players, and now it's 1,000 players. And so we definitely, Southeast Michigan, I would say there's 5 or 6 disc golf hotbeds. Southeast Michigan is in the top 3 with Charlotte and Minneapolis. Peoria is probably in the top 10 somewhere. So, D-Glow is definitely in my mind. I want to turn that into Ledgestone. The problem is Ledgestone, there's just so many things going for it in terms of the size. I think I would love to make D-Glow as big as Ledgestone, but that's going to be very challenging. So just Ledgestone has so many good things going for it with a lot of things that I don't have anywhere else. But yes, I'm always looking to grow. Now, Supreme Flight Open, I think there's a couple courses down there. And so there's no ability for me to grow that event to a Ledgestone scale yet. But we have a temporary course this year for our amateur event. And so we are excited for that one as well.
How important do you think having an amateur event alongside these pro tours is for making the economics of these tournaments work?
I think it's incredibly important. For Supreme Flight Open, we'll actually lose money on the amateur event this year, mainly because we did have to build a temporary course, which cost us enough money. And so, but in general, over time, the Ledgestone AM side is why we can have the Ledgestone payout consistently above every other event, including several majors, including all the events in Europe. I think Ledgestone was the 3rd highest payout event last year, or maybe 4. I think it was Tour Championship, Worlds, Ledgestone, or Champions Cup and Ledgestone. So I think the AMs, they buy spectator tickets, they buy merchandise, all of that helps me raise the payout. So same with D-Glow.
When we compare the 3 events, do you have similar profit margins vis-a-vis like percentages across these events, or losses in some cases, right? I guess I'm curious to know, just scaled wise, how they do.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, our business has 4 facets to it. We have tournaments, we have retail, which is online and in person. We have wholesale, and then we have course design. Course design is very small, but it's higher margin. The tournaments by far have the lowest margin. And that's mainly because we run not only pro events, but just amateur events, master events. For instance, I've ran Master Worlds once. We're running it again next year. That's a very low margin event. In fact, it has lost money when I've ran it before, because there's no spectator revenue. The media value is pretty low. Ledgestone, actually, believe it or not, has mostly been a loss leader, where we lose money on the actual event, but we make money off of selling product online and, through the event. D-Glow has mostly made money. It did lose money in 24 because inflation was a real thing for events last year in terms of my travel costs were 30% higher in 24 than 23. And so that was tough. But in general, the margin really depends on the spectator revenue. If there are not going to be spectators, it's going to be tough really to make. Like, I've ran Junior Worlds twice. I mean, we would never make money off that event. I think Junior Worlds is a great event to run. It's probably my favorite event to run because of the unbridled enthusiasm of the players and the kids. But I think if a manufacturer runs Junior Worlds, they're doing it to try to get some lifetime customers to use their brand. So,
I want to talk about Ledgestone, the brand. How have you felt the last 12 months in terms of sales? Excuse me. You guys do a kind of a particular thing. You're selling stuff that's basically unavailable other places in a lot of cases, in terms of the plastic runs and such that you have from Discraft. So have you felt the downturn? And, kind of what are your projections for the coming year?
Yeah, I mean, definitely 24, we did see our sales were up in 24, but that was mainly because of Pro Worlds. Our margin was down over 50% last year, just because our expenses, like our sales were up a little bit. We're talking 3 to 5%, but our expenses were up maybe 22% last year. And so that's not a great scenario. And so we spent a lot to try to get, the business in the door. We did run some new smaller tournaments. 25, we're going to see a decline for sure, especially on not as much the event side. The event side may be flat in terms of spectator revenue, revenue from entry fees, but the product sales side will be down in 25. There's no question about that. But I did spend a lot in 24. I bought a lot of things to invest in the business, I knew that 25 would be slower. I saw the trend starting actually in 22, but it was stable enough in 23. 24 saw some declines in the product business, but the services side last year was up still. And so that's the interesting thing is, yes, PDGA membership declined last year, but Ledgestone and D-Glow both saw 10% more players, which I don't think will happen in 25. And so I think I knew it was coming, and so we did prepare and plan for it, and we're pretty prepared for it in 25.
As you talk a little bit about this, slow down a little bit on the product side, and also referencing back to some of your answers on the AMA on Reddit, what do you see as like the means by which tournament directors are going to be able to sufficiently and consistently monetize events?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I think I think a lot of people think that I just print money at these events. And we do. I just print it going out the door as well. And so the funniest comment on the Reddit AMA was, why don't you pay your staff? And I thought, man, I wish that was the case. Like, I wish that I didn't spend $99,000 on my staff at Worlds, which doesn't include my full-time staff. That was just my 1099 staff. And so I think for events and TDs, for TDs to be able to make money, I think we're going to need to see, expectations change, which over time they have. I had a guy email me a few days ago saying, hey, I can't believe at Ledgestone I don't get a rangefinder anymore, because I used to, and in the VIP pack, they used to get for $90, they would get a rangefinder and free food and the VIP pass. I mean, I legit, I used to spend $98 to give them a $90 pass. And so I've had to scale that back over time because I can't lose too much money on certain things. And so I think we have to change expectations. It has to be okay for a TD to make money, and that's becoming more normal. But, in the next month, I'll probably post a budget and how to run an event somewhere. Maybe I'll talk to Charlie and let him run the article. Maybe I'll put it on Reddit. I want to be transparent and show people that it's not easy, but it is doable. I think, we have to get more non-endemic sponsors, which that's easier said than done, but changing expectations and having the community be okay with TDs making a little bit of money is the biggest change we need to see. And that may sound self-serving, but I don't, we're already at the point with our events where, we don't need the community to see that. I think enough of our people say, hey, the value that Ledgestone provides, like, we want to keep coming back. And we see that in the results. Ledgestone and D-Glow are the two biggest events in disc golf. And so, I think we wish that we were making money at all of our events, and we hope to change that over time with investments we're making. But I think the expectations need to change for sure.
So I want to follow up on something from the AMA. This was the top question. We've asked you about it before here. And, I think it's a really fair criticism, especially because there's very little insight into how things are working at the PDGA. So you're the board president, and, you keep getting these big majors, including now, Worlds in two out of the last 3 years. So people see that, and they understandably see self-dealing, right? You're the president of the board. You keep getting these events awarded to you. People are making this connection, obviously. Why continue to be serving on the board, which, is a volunteer position? It's a lot of unpaid time, but you have grown in terms of what you're doing elsewhere in disc golf to the point where perhaps it's no longer appropriate for you to be serving on the board. So why are you continuing to do it, given the fact that these questions have only become more prevalent?
I think it's a very good question, and it's legitimate. I really, the best answer I can give is that I've talked to the board about this. I've talked to staff. They feel that this conflict is being managed, and there's no one else that wants to do the job of board president right now. I've talked to current board members, and they say we're very lucky to have, your volunteer time. At the height of COVID, it was 20 hours a week. When we had to switch executive directors, we didn't have one for a few months. Essentially, I had to step in and help do the job, so I was board president, and I had to go kind of be, taking over some extra jobs, and I had to go recruit and hire a new executive director. And so I don't think anybody wants to do the job. Staff wants me to stay on. They're comfortable with it. The board, I have the support of the board. It's not like they're not aware that I have a conflict. It's not like they're not aware of all of that. In fact, staff have told me before, hey, if you weren't the board president, it'd be easier to give you more events. We look for reasons not to give you a major, which I don't like hearing, but I understand it. At the end of the day, I think they see the dedication and they see the value that I've provided, but the conflict is there, and we do manage it, but it's legit. I've thought about it. Trust me, my term is up next year, and I love not to be on the board. I'd love for someone else to take the reins. But at this point in time, it's a thankless job. No one pats me on the back. I'm not looking for that. It's a quiet job. Behind the scenes, it's more work than anybody could ever imagine. So
I guess my only follow-up is, when there are things that involve potential conflicts for you in some way, whether that be on like the event side, like bidding out majors, or on the, disc sales / discraft side, how is that managed? Like,
sure,
when they're bidding majors, are you just recusing yourself from conversations about that?
Well, I'll address the disc side first. The board and the PDGA no longer really have any influence over manufacturers. We used to approve discs and targets, and we don't even do that anymore. And so I don't have really any influence over what Innova does or Discraft. If there is a policy decision that would change maybe the standards, I would recuse myself, but we haven't had to look at that. In terms of the event side, the board no longer decides who gets the majors. We're not involved in the process of picking those. That's picked by the staff. That change, was positive. But even when that was the case, when the board did select the majors, I wasn't involved in the discussion or the vote. I couldn't influence the room. And so me saying that's not gonna, really put anything to bed. I get that there's still the influence there, but I've never been able to vote on my own event. And what I would say is this: there's been at least 2 times when I've run a major where there were no bids. There have been at least 3 times that I've run a major when I was the only bid. I think in 2019, I think there were 2 bids, and the other bid, they said wasn't viable because they didn't even have any courses. So when I ran Worlds in Peoria, nobody wanted it. I think when I got it for 24 Lynchburg, there was one other viable bid. And so there just haven't been a lot of bids. And even for this last term, a couple of the majors, I think we had a lot of bids, but some of those bidding teams just put a bid in and they bid on every event. And so that may count as 7 bids, but it's one bidding team. I believe staff said there were 22 unique bidding teams this last time for 12 available majors. And so if you do the math, that means that 60% of the bidding teams are probably going to get a major. And some of those may not be viable. There was one bidding team that posted, on Facebook that they bid on AM Worlds, but they only had 2 courses. Well, that's not a viable bid then, because AM Worlds needs more than 2 courses. Somebody was public about bidding on Master Worlds. Well, they only had 3 courses. Well, you need like 8 courses for that event. And so I think we just don't have enough people. I get what you're saying. It's very legitimate. We just don't have enough people running those events right now. And I do worry if I'm too transparent about running an event and the budget, someone may look at that and say, well, screw that. I'm not going to run a major because I can't make money, but if you do it the right way, you can make money. You're just not going to get rich.
2026 Michigan Worlds going to be used with the DGO course. Tell us a little bit about, the other course. I don't think it's as well known. Obviously, we don't see it on tours often. I don't even remember. I don't have the name on top of my head. I'm sorry. So you have to remind me of that and tell us a little bit about what that Worlds is going to look like.
The second course is going to be Black Locust. It's a 7,300-foot course right now. We're adding 5 new holes, which I just had a meeting with the Metro Park yesterday. Those are cut and done. 2 of them are open holes. 3 of them are, kind of open/wooded. And so the layout for Worlds will be about 10,500 feet. It'll be mostly wooded, a couple open holes. It's in the same park as Toboggan. It's 3 minutes down the road. So very desirable for the PDGA and myself to run a major and Worlds in the same park. You pull in and we're going to have everything right there. And so pretty exciting. Obviously Southeast Michigan, there's more per capita disc golfers in Michigan and courses than any other state. I think you're going to have a European Open-like crowd there. Deglo a couple years ago, if you saw the famous picture on hole 1 with the playoff with Corey and Calvin, 4,000 people there. I think we'll have 10,000 people on the weekend. At Toboggan, a lot of investments we're making in that event. We're very excited for that. So,
sticking on this year really quick, you're you're TDing the Pro Tour Championships this year?
That's correct. Yeah.
So you're doing, at some point you're going to run the whole tour.
No.
So tell us a little bit about what's going on in Virginia, because I know there's been changes to New London. Are those done? Have they recut some of that course? What's going on with Ivy Hill? I saw in your AMA that you're changing hole 14. So I want to hear a little bit about what's going on there.
Yeah. So last year, Jeff had approached me and said, hey, Lynchburg looks amazing. The fans are passionate. A lot of fans there. Let's come back. Let's do a playoff event. I was excited for that. And then he called me and said, hey, can you just run the Tour Championship? The Tour Championship cost a lot of money. The payout is massive. I think the tour was looking for a partner to help with that. And so I talked to the county and city and they signed off on it. New London has been cut. Paul redesigned, I would say, just over half the course just a few months ago. And the county worked very quickly to recut the holes, and those are recut. And they are currently, I think it snowed there a few days ago. So I think there's some weather and they've had a lot of rain. But they are hoping, I believe the target is to reopen the course with the new layout Memorial Day. They're going to be installing new X-Step Pro T-pads here in about 2 months. So they're going through the process now of, I believe the course is closed now totally because there is some construction that will happen with new T-pads, putting new baskets in. But the course did have to change because of a grant that they received. And so that's that. Ivy Hill, when I put hole 14 in, I had people that looked at the course with me. I was never in love with that pin location, but everybody else that I looked at it with was like, Nate, you got to do it. You got to do it. And it's still on me. I selected it. It was my call. I knew that it was dicey, but I signed off on it. Obviously, it was my decision. I don't regret it, but I didn't love it because I think a few days before the event, I said, hey, I'm going to use the short pin location because you can't even walk up this thing. And Ivy, which they were great, they said, hey, we'll build you steps. And I was like, it's not going to happen. Well, I showed up the next day and they were done. And I was like, well, all right, I'm going to go with it. And so we drilled the hole into the rock and put the sleeve in. They are excavating that entire hillside for me and removing all of the rocks. And they're going to resod that, replant that. And we'll either keep the pin there without the rocks, or I'll move it back a little bit, actually, which sounds weird to move it back, but there's a flatter spot for the basket. And then we have a massive limb that we intended to cut last year and couldn't get access that will allow drives to get about 70 feet closer to the pin. So there's a left gap that was tough to hit, but it'll be more accessible with that limb gone. So those are the two big changes there on 14. And then we're looking at a new pin or a new tee location for 15 in the woods, actually.
Sticking with this year and circling back, Spring Flight Open next weekend. Who do you think's going to take it down?
I'm not good on predictions. I mean, I think I wouldn't be surprised if it's an AB Ricky battle again, but you can't count out Gannon. On the FPO side, I don't think Kristen's playing. And so, that's wide open. It could be Missy. If I assume Evelina is playing, as defending champion. So I just looked at it and I think I saw her. So I think more wide open on the FPO, but Missy, Evelina, on that side. But MPO, I'd say, Gannon, Ricky, AB. Those are three good choices. So
bold.
I know.
I'm just messing with you. We're going to make the same picks. All right. Hey, Nate, appreciate your time as always. Good luck with the event next week and with a busy year ahead.
Yep, thanks. And for those watching, Ledgestone registration opens on Tuesday to the masses at 6 p.m. Central. We are pumped for the 15th Ledgestone event.
I wanted to ask one last thing. How is PDGA membership trending so far this year?
I believe it's very early data from January, but so far, I believe it's down just under 18% for active members. I think there was some very cold weather that prevented a few events from maybe, popping up. And so I think the target for the year is probably in the negative 10% in terms of if you read the public office report. So it's trending down for sure. But the early month data is hard to tell from January because people in most of the country aren't playing events yet, and they don't usually renew until they play their first event. So,
right. Okay. Well, thanks very much. Appreciate it. And hopefully we start to see some bounce back across pretty much everything this year.
Yep.
Nate Heinold with us here on The Upshot. We'll be right back. Welcome back to The Upshot. Josh, much to digest from that with Nate. What sticks out to you from our conversation?
It's interesting to me the way that that Nate's company continues to kind of like shift. Like I feel like I get it pinned down. I feel like I have an understanding. And then SFO's in. The Pro Tour Championship. And it's just and more events. You make the joke that he's going to be running the entire tour by the end of it. And I know it's said a little bit tongue in cheek, but he's running what, 3 Pro Tour events this season? 4 this season. That is a lot of Pro Tour events. It's a ton. And so it's interesting to me the way that Nate continues to kind of like flex around kind of these events. And the thing is like, I don't think it's a bad thing per se. I think that we need tournament directors like Nate. We need career guys like Nate who have a company, the infrastructure, resources, and desire, and willingness to run these events when we need people to step in. But I just question, like, is this the long-term solution, or is this the like long-term is Nate and maybe 3 other guys, right? Kind of just each own a quarter of the tour and are in charge of a quarter of the tour, or is this just a interim because we can't get enough tournaments to put together staff that are, experienced enough to run these events? That's the question mark that I still am I'd have no idea which way we're going to go.
It's a very fair question. And I mean, it's not like, look at who has run Worlds since Utah, right? So Utah was a little bit of a mess. Of course, we're always going to remember that Worlds fondly because of what happened on the course and the crazy ending in both divisions. I mean, it was an amazing tournament from a fan perspective, but there were a lot of problems. There was a lot of drama. The PDGA clowned a bunch of stuff up. The TD clowned a bunch of stuff up. And, then after that, we go to, where was 22? Why am I forgetting? The year before Vermont.
It was Emporia. Was
it? You're right.
Yeah.
So we go to Emporia, very experienced TDs. Now, look, the courses were, they are what they are. They're in Emporia. We know this. Yeah. They completely bungled the whole spectator side of things.
Yep, they did.
But on the other hand, maybe it was going to be impossible anyway because you're in Emporia.
Sure.
Right? It's just not enough people around to support that. So, whatever, that doesn't go great. But they do put it in a place with very experienced TDs, right? Doug Gierkes is running the show. Yep. And then 23, Jeff Spring. 24, Nate Heinold. 25, UC Merisma, who, of course, has been running a major for, over a decade. Then 26, Nate Heinold. 27, Jeff Spring.
Yep.
This is not coincidental. It is just simply not possible to guarantee that you're going to have a good event if you give it to a TD who doesn't run major events. And I don't mean major, I mean very large scale, not necessarily people who've run a major, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's more likely to me that this is the model we're going to see, which is that you have somewhere between 5 and 10 tournament director groups, even, you might say, who are running these high-end events. And there's probably always going to be some room on the Pro Tour for a local person here and there to run things. But
Des Moines
right,
has done an excellent job.
Right.
And it's,
I mean, Ty Tanat is but he works for the Pro Tour.
That's true.
He's got a lot of resources on that end, and obviously they've done a great job with that tournament. But I just think it's not realistic to expect that you're just going to have random TDs who run a lot of B tiers suddenly pop up and start running Pro Tours, let alone high-end majors where you're expecting north of 5,000 fans on the final day.
And it then pivots back to this question of bid process. Maybe what it needs to look like is Jeff Spring, Nate Heinold, UC Merisma, they go and almost solicit their own bids first and say, I will bring my team and we will run a Worlds who has a place that would like to have it. And a local TD comes and says, yeah, I'm in. And they work with Nate. They put together a plan between Nate's team and the local staff. And then together they submit a bid. And maybe was how it needs to be moving forward. And every year or and maybe they alternate, right?
I mean, that's what's happening in Portland, right?
It is. It absolutely is.
Jeff and company and Pro Tour guys are working with the Stumptown local Oregon folks to run the tournament.
And maybe that needs to be the model.
I mean, it feels like it is the model.
Right. Right? Maybe it needs to be more formalized, right? Because maybe we could get, and I will say, and maybe it's not a fair statement anymore. But like Worlds was cycling on similar courses, and we're starting to break out of that, and I'm glad for that. Even if we are sticking with the same TD. But I think that's an opportunity to get to other places of the country that have never held a Worlds before.
Yeah, I mean, I think you still need some kind of process by which people can sort of express interest in like
Absolutely
hosting an event, right? So we know Estonia put in a bid to run a Worlds. I don't think Estonia should get a Worlds. I don't think they have the courses for it. Show me the courses. Like, you can't just have Worlds because you have a lot of people. Like, sure, you can have a major. Right. I think it's cool that they're getting a major. I would love to, the professionalism of the event is a big part of what it's all about. But Worlds has to be, we have to reserve high quality venue for it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when we don't do that, we see lackluster results. It's hard to get super excited about Emporia Worlds, and I don't think we'll ever be back there. It's pretty interesting. It's pretty interesting. And like, I still think the PDGA should consider full timing somebody to do, majors or like run some of their events. Like Champions Cup becomes a wholly owned and operated PDGA tournament. Rather than sort of like being bid out to TDs. I don't know if that makes sense or not, but it does fit the model of like, we're going to work with these 6 to 8 people to run these tournaments.
Yep.
All right. Before Steve Hill joins us, a couple of quick notes. Another pro leaving the tour, Chandler Fry, has said he's done. So this is the kind of player who it's like, as you're getting older, can you really keep making it work? He's a great player. He's 1021 rated, but that's just not good enough anymore.
Yep. I mean, you've got guys who are locals that don't tour who are 1020 rated these days. And that's tough.
It's tough.
That's tough. That's tough to then make a name and really continue to profit off of being on tour. And even if Chandler Fry, like, there's a possibility, Chandler Fry has done this for a long time. There's a good chance that Chandler Fry probably still could have continued to make it work, but that's a lot of stress. It's hard. It's a hard life to be a, not top tier pro on tour. And so maybe he just decided he didn't want to anymore. And I can't say I blame him.
Yeah. I mean, he basically said, I'll be embarking on a new journey, one with a little more consistency and balance. I was hoping for a couple more years of playing, but last year's financial instability and mounting medical bills got me pretty good. And that's just the reality. Like, if you have non-standard expenses for being someone who lives, out of their car, basically, it's going to be really hard unless you're a top 20 player on tour, I think.
Yep.
So, best wishes to Chandler, a beloved player. And
hope his new endeavor is still in the sport.
Yeah, and I don't know Chandler, but I wonder, like, is he a talker? Could he become somebody who gets involved in the media side of things? Knows the game, friendly, affable,
right?
Possibility,
for sure,
maybe. Josh, also Shelly Sharpe Memorial took place in Scottsdale over at Vista XL. And, Ricky looking pretty good post bag change, Josh. He beats out Anthony Barella by 2 strokes. AB had the lead after round 1. Ricky tied it up with a 1092 rated 47 round 2, and then he tied the course record in round 3. AB shot a 1081 rated 48, but Ricky shot a 1098 rated 46.
Ties course record with that 46.
That's pretty good.
Pretty good.
These are insane rounds on Vista.
Yeah.
They're insane.
Yeah. They are. No slowdown there. AB and Ricky just basically blow everybody else out of the water. Adam Hammes finishes out the podium, and he's 7 strokes back from Anthony Barella.
Adam's probably like, I'm the best player here, but then there's like these two absolute unreal guys. Like he's like the
Right.
best of the rest, you know?
That's right. Yeah. I mean, it definitely stabilizes after that, 23, 22, 21, 20 under. And so it definitely, like you said, best of the rest, but just on a whole other stratosphere for Ricky and AB over there. I think this is a bunch of times AB is just like second place now at these events for the past couple of years. So I think it's funny because AB used to just like absolutely run these events.
It's going to be a great season. I mean,
It
if
is.
Gannon, AB, and Ricky play like this all year, the way they played in this preseason, we're in for a treat.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm telling you right here, I'm calling it. Rick's winning a major this year, bud. He is looking dialed.
Listen.
He's barely started with a new bag, and he
you're
course
right.
recorded.
Yeah, you're right. Let me ask you a question though. Was his abilities ever the reason he hasn't won a major the past 3 years?
No.
Okay, excuse me. Are his abilities the reason he hasn't won a major the past 7 years? Right. I guess since he came back from Lyme disease,
I think he had a couple of years where like he just straight up didn't quite have it because of injuries and Lyme and everything else.
Yeah, but since he's been healthy, it's between the ears and a tall, skinny 16 to 19-year-old named Gannon Burr. Like that's the problem. And guess what? Neither of those issues exist here at Vista del Camino at the Shelly Sharpe Memorial.
Fair point.
So read into it all you want, but I am one who doesn't put a lot of stock in these Arizona events to start the season.
On the FPO side, Jen Allen beats Katrina Allen by 4 strokes. Good to see Katrina back out there. She had shot a 58, 992 rated final round. So, got some polishing to do, but I feel like it's a good sign that Katrina is back and playing competitively right away.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing too is like, speaking of, players who run Arizona, right?
Yeah.
Jen Allen's been dominant at these events for years. Like, so again,
You're on her turf for sure.
Right, you absolutely are. And in your first event back, like, don't get me wrong, I'm sure Katrina does have a little bit of warm up that needs to happen, but I will reiterate my statement I said for the MPO side. I don't put a lot of stock in these Arizona events in terms of season results.
A tournament that used to be a bigger deal in the preseason, the Wintertime Open, took place in Pasadena as well. Still an A tier. McBeth used to play this. You used to see a bunch of the pros back when the tour started out west.
Yeah,
going out here
made a lot more sense at that point.
MPO side, not really any notable men's pros, but still some very good players. Cam Rico wins it by 4 strokes over Aviel Gomez. I bring it up because I want to mention that Owen Scoggins wins by 15 strokes in FPO. And it's not just that, right? So like her competition, she was going to win this tournament. That was not in question.
Sure.
10:04 rated second round, 10:16 rated third round. Never doubt the dog, Josh.
I think
she could have a great season again.
Sir, I think you're the one who said you doubted the dog in the fantasy draft.
But I'm reminding myself and you and all of our listeners to not doubt.
She and I took that personally. Yeah, watch out. Owen is just, time will never catch up. Oh, you still did pick Owen in your draft. Okay. I remember you doubted her, but then so you did end up picking her though. So
Owen in the final round closed out the back 9. So starting hole 11, birdie, 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 eagle, birdie, birdie, and then par on 18. Oh my goodness. That's awesome. All right. I'd love to see the putt from 15. I don't know if this probably wasn't any video coverage. 445-foot par 4. She gets a 2.
And Owen doesn't throw 400 feet, right?
I don't think so.
That wasn't a putt, Charlie.
Maybe not.
That was almost a full rip for Owen.
I don't know.
On the second shot.
Interesting. No other eagles on the hole during the week, so probably a cool one. All right. Joining us coming up in just a moment, Steve Hill from UDisc to talk about the brand new UDisc growth report rounds up again in 2025 on UDisc. We got to talk about the data that they are seeing and how we can square it with what we've been hearing from everybody else. And it's not just on the industry side, right? Like, people are reporting tournament signups are down. I'm seeing fewer people at the courses in my area. Like, what are you seeing in Idaho?
A lot of snow right now, to be honest. But
yeah, that's maybe a stupid time of year to ask you that question.
Yeah, here's what I will say though. I mean, even last season, right? I am seeing, and personally, even like my disc golf consumption has changed as the further I get away from COVID, where I am just less and less focused on playing competitively, and like with that comes less like purchasing discs and stuff. But I still play a lot of disc golf and I still go, but it's more about like, because on a weekend, if I go play a tournament, I'm typically taking a little bit of time off work, or it's just, if I don't, it's completely monopolizing my weekend. Travel time, 3 rounds, even if I like don't have an afternoon or get my afternoon back on a Sunday, like I'm exhausted, even a 2-dayer, right? It's monopolizing my weekend. And I just am at the point, like I'd rather just go play 2 casual rounds. I use the UDisc like activity tracker all the time now, where I don't score my round and just go enjoy throwing frisbees. And that's different. I
will say this is very true. Like, Josh used to be like a weekend a month. It felt
I
like
was out more than
at a tournament.
Yeah.
And now, like, I don't hear that from you much.
No, I just, and I think part of it is like, you know, having a kid, right? That also, that
doesn't change anything.
that makes a little bit. I mean, I had the kid right at the beginning of disc golf season, so you know that's part of it. But it's just I still love disc golf for the outdoor recreation, and I love throwing frisbees. But yeah, it's just I'm not as interested in the competitive side nearly as much. It feels like life has just gone on, and it was such a big chunk of it that it like monopolized the rest of my hobbies. And I'd rather have multiple hobbies and just enjoy throwing the disc.
Very interesting times. We'll talk to Steve about it right after this. Welcome back to the Upshot. Joining us now, longtime friend of the pod, former co-host Steve Hill. Steve is the director of marketing at UDisc. He has previously worked at Ultra World Disc Golf, PDGA, and has been in the industry quite some time. Steve, welcome back.
Thanks, man. Good to be back. Nice to see you guys. Always love to come on the Upshot. Great show.
It's always great to have you on. UDisc growth report out for 2025. Perfect timing, just enough before the start of the season that we can dedicate some time to it. There's a lot in this growth report. I think I want to start with the thing that has been that I've been thinking about since I looked at it.
Yeah.
Help me understand why the data that you are presenting do not mesh with anything else that we've heard. Tournament signups, industry sales, course busyness, anecdotally from people around the country. Like, everybody's seeing less, and yet you are reporting more, maybe a little bit marginally more, but still more sure. rounds.
Yeah.
Is this purely more people downloading the app, or like, help me understand to the best of your ability?
Yeah. No, it's a really tricky thing, right? Like, I understand, like I listen to the show. I know I go on the internet. I go to disc golf courses. Like, I understand people think like, oh, there's like been this weird kind of common sentiment that like disc golf is somehow like floundering or something like that. And I don't think that's the case. Obviously, this report shows that it's not necessarily like just more people downloading the app. Like, obviously market share is a component of it, but there's new markets too. And it may not be right in front of all of our eyeballs, but like if we look at disc golf around the world, it's growing. There's some really great anecdotes in here about places like Colombia and Poland and just really, really cool, exciting spots that things are popping up. And like, I think to your greater point, it's the way I've kind of been thinking about this is like, what is like not you, but the general, your definition of the sport, right? There's the industry side, the more professional side, the competitive tournament side, even the business manufacturing side. But then there's just the general, like, recreational, everyday casual player side, getting more courses in and stuff like that. And really at UDisc, that's like our bread and butter, right? Like, obviously we have our leagues platform, we have our events platform, we used to do stuff with the tours and everything, but like, our bread and butter has always been the everyday casual player. And even if you're not waiting 17 hours on the first tee anymore, like, we're not in COVID times, obviously that goes without saying, but like, we're getting more courses, more people are coming in and playing. So like, I think it was really interesting listening to your guys' industry episode a week or two back. The general like sense of optimism from those guys there, and I think you were even a little bit surprised by that yourself on that show. And we were obviously working on the report at the time, and so none of that was super surprising. Like, I know there have been what feels like some headwinds, but I think like Levi from Pound, and we actually like called him out in the report because he was really, really on it. It just kind of feels like we're at the point where we're not booming, right? But we're correcting or like getting back into a more stable period from like the pandemic boom, which is actually really good, I think, because now it's just going to be a little more predictable. Like, people can plan around it. Like, nobody could have planned for the COVID boom, and I think everybody went, oh my God, we have to scale up and do all these things, and maybe they overscaled and overdid it. And so now we're getting back into a more like sustainable growth trend. And yeah, it's not hockey stick up, but I also don't think it needs to be. It's just it's kind of a healthy level of growth right now that I think everybody should feel pretty good about. So that's kind of my take on the general outlook.
So Charlie and I have read this report, obviously, but some of our listeners may not have yet.
Of course, yeah, it just came out.
Right, it just came out. So give us then, what does that growth look like? What percentage-wise, raw numbers, courses, players? Like, give us the quick rundown of the numbers of what we're looking at and how that's changed, into 2024.
Yeah, for sure. So, like, the big headline stats right now are like more than 16,000 courses in the world. That's like another almost 1,200 last year. So we're still getting like 3.2 new courses per day in the ground. Rounds played were up by 1.5 million. Big trend over the last 5 years of just like 76% participation growth with just rounds scored on UDisc. And again, like, this is all stuff on UDisc. We know that we don't capture everything. But we have at least like a reasonable enough market share to be able to give this information back and like use it to help measure the sport's growth. And that's really like our goal with this, is to like empower organizers and other disc golfers to like take this information and show, hey, look, like, you can invest in this thing. Hey, Josh on the city council, look at this report. Can I get some more courses, please? Or can we get new benches or new tee pads? Or like, can you throw a little money our way? Because like, people are doing this thing, right? So that's really, we're trying to just show that overall sustainable growth here. Like, I think there's always the big stuff we're trying to really communicate to people is like 9-hole courses, great. Don't just get stuck on having to have 18. If you can only get 9-hole courses, do it. And they're going in at like 2x rate compared to 18-hole courses. Take the space, get 9 holes, start your community that way, and then just big stats on like recreation hours, steps, health metrics, stuff like that. Things that hopefully move the needle for like decision makers in who can give people money or resources for courses.
I want to stay on the 9-hole courses thing. It's we were actually talking to Nate Heinold off the air after our interview with him a few minutes ago.
I get to share a show with Nate Heinold this week.
You do.
Oh, it's amazing.
You get the second spot, so you get the final
That's
word.
fine.
If you want to talk some trash or something, it's your chance.
Oh, I'll pass. Thank you.
No,
he was talking about really how the PDGA needs to be really focusing on getting 9-hole courses in the ground. And a couple of interesting stats from the report. Players on UDisc who scored their first round at a 9-hole course average more lifetime rounds than those who start on an 18-hole course. And new disc golfers who played their first round on an easy course were 10% more likely to play a second round than those who got their start on a very challenging one. This to me, like, maybe just says it all in some ways about like where everyone needs to be thinking. Like, I guess I'm curious, how has the trend changed, if you know, over time for the sort of like mix? Because you said 9 holes have been 2x 18 holes last year. What was it 3 or 4 years ago?
You know, I don't know off the top of my head. I know it has been like shifting. I'd have to go back and look. I know that it pretty much like this trend was similar last year as well. I think a few years ago it really started to kind of like tip in that direction of just 9-hole courses. And yeah, it's one of those things where making like, I think disc golf, at least as long as I've been in the industry, if you will, and just playing, right? Like, people who get excited about disc golf sometimes fall into the trap of, I want to get a new course for me and my group and my buddies. And they want to go out and build the biggest, baddest, most challenging 18-hole course because that's what they want to play, right? But that's not exactly going to be the right way to build your community for the long term. And like, we could probably talk until we're blue in the face about the whole like grow the sport, shrink the sport vibe. Like, I have feelings, but really, like, if you're trying to think about ways to like get the sport in front of more people, get more places to play for everybody so that your 18-hole course can happen, like, there's a path, right? The path is get something small on the ground and grow into the larger, bigger, badder scene. And so like, I'm super pumped to hear Nate say that. Like, it makes a ton of sense. And like, Nate's on the Paul McBeth Foundation board. The Paul McBeth Foundation's all over this report. So there's a lot of alignment there in just, yeah, what the goals and the outcomes can be and how you can start to just get things going in your area. And like, some of this totally makes sense, right? I go start on an easy course. I'm probably going to have a little bit better of a time, right? Mm-hmm. I maybe my first round, I'm not going to get birdies, but I'm probably not going to get as many 6s, 7s, 8s, 9s, however many you're going to get on your first round as you would at a longer 18-hole course. So some of it's just common sense, and then some, but it's nice that we have the data to like back it up.
In between interviews, we were talking a little bit about kind of the experience and what, you know, anecdotally I was experiencing and seeing at courses. And Steve, I think you pulled up numbers for me for Ross Park. That's the 9-hole course that we were talking about. It is a park. It is easy to play. It is small. There's a playground right next to it. There's a pavilion. It's next to the local zoo and the local pool, so it's like very well situated. There are pickleball courts just down the hill. So I'd love to hear what some of those numbers look like on, you know, a popular 9-hole course in a town of, I mean, Pocatello is 50,000, so yeah, not massive by any means.
No, I mean, if you're looking at like, I just have the lifetime stats pulled up. I could pull 24 if it'd be easier, but lifetime stats, you know, it's been played 18,500 times. You're pulling in 1,600 unique people. And like, it's the big numbers to me, especially for you as like a city council member, are, you know, almost 25,000 hours spent on the course and just players on UDisc. Right. Your course there sounds like the kind of course that is probably a little lower market share for UDisc.
It probably is.
There's more casuals going out. There's more people who are maybe just going out with their friends or their buddies or their young kids or their family. They may not be as inclined to even track their scores. Mm-hmm. And then almost 54 million steps taken over time on the course there. And so like, we're really trying to make sure people have, you know, this information for their course. We provide all this stuff to our course ambassadors. We send out like monthly emails to them. We have like, we're starting to work on like larger country level reporting for just aggregating more of this stuff to empower people. I think that's like our mission at UDisc is pretty simple. Like, we want to empower the world to play more disc golf, and we have the information to be able to do that, and we just want to keep working to give it back. So like, we have these really great dashboards that that ambassadors can access, and like, you can see where people have come from to play. Most people, Josh, are coming less than 10 miles to play that course, which makes sense. Like, it's a local course.
Yep.
But you can also see, like, we can zoom out and see there have been players from Texas, Utah, Virginia over time. Like, so we have all these stats for that we provide to every course, and like, the tourism, the recreation hours is always super exciting for people just to see how far people are coming from. You can make kind of an impact on your town that way. Or you have the local people who are just cobbling up hours and steps and rounds played. And it kind of brings it back to something we haven't talked about yet in the report. But one of the things that we were really most excited about was this study that these economists in New York, in the New York area did, that basically put a value on a round of disc golf at upwards of $70. And it was using this concept of like consumer surplus, where you essentially are doing a study to put a value on things like parks and beaches, stuff that don't have like a ticketing fee or an entry fee, right? Just to be able to say, hey, how much value are people getting out of this? Not necessarily how much would they pay, but just how much value are they getting out of this? And they found that at these couple courses in New York, that like, people were getting up to $70 of value per round. And I think this is like one of the first legitimate economic studies that have been done on disc golf. And we're just like so pumped about that, seeing that truly like people are getting value out of this. And if you were going to go and like put in a course, let's say it starts at like $30,000. That's low end. Course designers, we love you. Please, if you need to jump that number up a little bit, you have to make a livelihood too. But like, let's just ballpark it low key at like $30,000 entry level course. If you've got like, if you took like that recreational value and extrapolated that over the cost, like, a disc golf course can be quote unquote like paid off in terms of recreational value within like a couple months. And so it's just really clarifying to see what this sport can give to communities in terms of a form of recreation.
I think that the work that you all are doing to make this data available is invaluable. How many
Thank you.
How many people do you think have used this data in some way to get a new course built?
Oh gosh, it's hundreds, potentially thousands. Like we get, to even maybe not like for new courses, it's probably had to have been hundreds of new courses use this stuff, and then people use it to do maintenance or to get maintenance done at existing courses. We've had people reach out to us trying to save courses when they're at risk of being pulled.
Right.
So it's up there for sure. I don't have the exact number, but like, and if anyone is looking for more information, you can send us an email. It's hello@udisc.com. And, if you're trying to get a course in your area or your course is at risk, like, it breaks my heart every time there's something on like Reddit or whatever, where it's like, our course is at risk because of insert reason here.
Our New York City course has been under siege a little bit.
Yeah. And we actually talked about that in the report a little bit.
I saw that.
And being able to, we worked with those guys to make sure they had the information they need, just in case, right? Thankfully it sounds like everything's going to be okay there, but yeah, like being able to show people like, no, this is being used, like this is important. And like, I don't know of a lot of other sports that you can actually do that, like in a recreational sense. Like there's obviously you could sit and do head counts. But like as far as a more passive use activity like this, like something like trails or mountain biking paths or stuff like that, I don't know if there's I don't think there's, I don't know if All Trails is like putting out reports of trail usage
I
to
don't know.
recreational areas and stuff like that. So we take a lot of pride in that. Like it's part of what we're all just really passionate about disc golf, and we want more people to play it and have more access to it. That's really what it comes down to at the end of the day, is like, we want to be able to give this stuff back to the community.
How is UDisc's business doing? Are you just going up? Did you see a revenue increase in 2024?
Yeah, we're like stable right now. Like I don't know the exact numbers off the top of my head, but like we're fine. We're profitable. We're in a position where we can be looking like long term of the sport. We're not just like scramble town. So that's the nice part. The other part, like, is, I think we've probably talked about it before, but like when we did make some changes to our pricing model, we took away like limits on how many rounds you could keep track of. Like,
right.
you can do that unlimited now. And the goal was for exactly reasons like this. Like, we knew that was holding us back from being able to fully capture like enough measurement. If people were just either not going to use the app because they were going to get hard cut at 10 rounds or whatever, or were just deleting their rounds to stay under that, we wanted to incentivize people using the app, whether they were going to pay for it or not, so that we could, again, still like provide this information for different localities. So yeah, it's been good. Like, we've been in a good spot. We're real excited about everything moving forward. I think we're feeling that same level of optimism that kind of the other guys on the show the other week were, for sure.
When you look at your growth over at UDisc, were you in 2024 like pre-COVID growth numbers, higher, lower? What exactly was your user base kind of expansion like?
Oh, I mean, it was like compared to pre-COVID, you mean? What do you? Sorry.
Well, I'm so sorry. Like, what in percentage growth from 2023 to 2024? What was that number? Higher than you were expecting? Was it level? Did it continue to drop from COVID times? Where was that number?
Got it. No,
yeah.
our user, or our number of people who use the app went up, not like a huge amount, but it still went up. It wasn't quite. It was, we were getting, more people were scoring rounds. It wasn't a drastic boom in people. I think we have like 1.26 million people use the app last year. That was up from the year before, but I think not too much. I think it was like only like 1.2 or something like that. So like not a massive number of like people, but like, usage has still been strong, and like we feel like we're in a good spot to keep like getting more new people. Like, we're getting more people coming in to the app still, even in the low season. More people are discovering the sport, more people are getting recommended it by their friends and coming in and everything like that. So like, it wasn't like it wasn't like the COVID boom where it went, but like we weren't flat or down. We were up too. Yeah, it's at this more like general. Like our like pre-COVID disc golf was growing at this like, 10-15% per year rate. And that's about what we're at in like a more, we're like stabilizing is kind of the way we look at it. And I think it just makes it, I know everyone wants the sport to like be the hugest next big thing and like be on ESPN yesterday and all that kind of stuff. But like, I do think that this area where we're at now, where it is a little more manageable for everyone in the industry, is probably a good thing. Like, I don't like, I'm sure if we had like a time machine and could go back in time and get ourselves geared up to deal with the COVID boom, maybe disc golf would be in a better place. But like, that's just not how the world works. And like, we're still in a really good place. There's more courses going in. There's more people. So I think this just gives us a lot of optimism that like now maybe the industry can just like hopefully the vibe starts to feel a little bit better for you guys. You know what I mean? Like, and some of it is very much like the vibes economy, right? Like, the vibes don't always match the numbers, but the vibes kind of drive what they are. And so, my hope though is that, yeah, just this level of like stability will allow people to like forecast better, will allow companies to either staff up, staff down, whatever they need to do to just keep sustainably growing in the right way.
I wanted to ask, just to stay kind of on this topic, because, obviously we are a mostly professional focused podcast. You said that there is a downward trend in terms of how much people say they are spending the same or more on discs, as well as other equipment like bags, carts, and accessories. And your responses to an October 2024 survey indicated that interest in professional disc golf had waned by 15%. These are concerning numbers, I think, and maybe reflect what we've seen in the industry side of things. What would you say needs to happen from the manufacturers and pro tour side in terms of getting people? And we've also seen downtrends in PDGA membership, by the way.
Yeah.
Those are directly reported. That's not inferred from UDisc.
Right.
What would you say to those groups about what we need to do to try to turn those things around?
I think it's just continuing to invest in infrastructure, right? Like if there are more courses, more people will be coming to the sport. It's always the most mind-blowing stat to me is that I think it's something like 80%, or it's in the report. I don't remember the exact number. I apologize, but it's something like 85% or 80% of something like that, of disc golfers find disc golf from a friend or family member. And the next highest number is people just driving by a course. Like it's literally just the visibility of just, it's not Jomez videos. It's not knowing that there's a pro scene. It's not these other things. It's like friends and family and what's that metal thing in the park? And so like just pure infrastructure, I think would be a great way for these organizations to continue to invest, and like knowing that Nate is thinking that same way as the board president of the PDGA is very encouraging. It's just going to continue to be those grassroots movements, and also investing in like education, right? Like UPlay, Edge, and different charitable organizations. McBeth Foundation, I can't shout those guys out enough. They are like the impact that Paul and that foundation have had over just a short period of time, like 4 years now, is incredible. Every time we are talking to someone in a new country about disc golf, they've been working with the McBeth Foundation. And it's just really, it's really enabling that growth worldwide. Sorry, I found my number. 80% of people said they were introduced to disc golf by a friend or family. And then I think it was 10% or something found it from driving by a course. So yeah, it's continue. I know it sounds like cliche, right? But it's grassroots. It's continuing to invest at the local level. But I know that's sometimes hard when you're trying to run a professional tour or a governing body. But ideally, more people playing more courses it's going to filter eventually up. You're going to, if you get a bigger audience, right, grow the pie, your slice will get bigger too.
I want to say this. Paul McBeth Foundation has been, it's just been amazing. And to me, if I have to be honest, I find it a little embarrassing that the PDGA has been ineffective in doing the same kind of thing, given that they have a 20, 30 year head start and in theory, like much bigger budgets and the ability to do this. And like, it's their mandate as a nonprofit to grow the sport. And yet it feels like the McBeth Foundation has done more in like 4 years than the PDGA did in the previous 10. And maybe that's unfair. I mean, Steve, you worked at the PDGA, so maybe you can tell me if I'm wrong about that. But is it just like the lack of red tape and like the focus on putting in courses around the world that has made McBeth Foundation so effective here? Is it the connection to like industry? I'm surprised the PDGA has not done, and it's not that the PDGA has nothing. Let me be clear.
Right.
But the McBeth Foundation, it feels just like, is like opening up disc golf in new countries single-handedly.
Yeah. Yeah. And look, and like you said, PDGA hasn't done nothing. They have the Marco Polo program. They have grants and things like that. And I think they do plenty of partnering with the Palm McBeth Foundation too. So I don't want to like disparage them by any stretch of the imagination, but I do think, like, to your point, it's that singular focus for the Palm McBeth Foundation, right? Their mission is to bring disc golf to underserved areas. And the PDGA, they're a governing body, and they have a lot of different things that they try and do. They have a lot of different tasks on their plate. They are trying to get disc golf to grow as a competitive endeavor. They're trying to support their tournament directors. They're trying to support a professional tour and major events and competition. And then they're also trying to support disc golf in new countries and things like that. So I think it's just a matter of, that focus for the Palm McBeth Foundation. And like, it's great. I'd be more than happy for the Palm McBeth Foundation to just be like the entity that is doing this, and let PDGA focus on the things that it's good at. Like, I think that's one of the really nice things in the sport is, like, there was a long period of time where I think that, and I think they do still sometimes get stuck in this a little bit, is that the PDGA feels like they have to do everything because they're the PDGA, right? But they don't have to. You've got Palm McBeth Foundation, and you've got UPlay, and you've got Edge, and they can, hopefully, I would love to see them use more of their resources to continue supporting those entities, and then they can use their time and their resources and their focus as a staff and a board on what they're good at supporting tournament directors and competition.
When you look at the report kind of as in its totality, you've indicated you have a pretty optimistic view, that there's a lot of reasons that we should continue to be optimistic about disc golf. What other big takeaway that maybe we haven't discussed yet do you think is important, whether that be in terms of industry trends, of things that are valuable for the sport, things that people who are trying to put a course in should take into mind, whatever you think? Like, what's the thing that we have not talked about yet? You're like, this is something that's just so exciting to see.
Man, I think, like, just the emerging countries. I know we talked about it a little bit, but like we talked to this guy in Colombia, and he's a retiree from Florida. And when he moved to Colombia, he wanted to go to Colombia because it's beautiful weather and everything. It was a great place for him to retire. And he got there and there was one basket. And so he had to, like, basically cultivate a community. He found a bunch of Ultimate players, Charlie. And now disc golf is, like, really starting to thrive there. They still only have a few courses, but, like, they've got plans in the works for a bunch of new ones. They have regular competitions and meetups and casual play. And it's just, like, that kind of stuff, those anecdotes, those stories, those are the things that, like, get me super excited while putting this report together, is just talking to all these people and places and remembering that, disc golf is solid and healthy here in the States. And I do think that the continued growth of the sport is going to keep coming worldwide, like outside the United States. Norway, just, again, 100 more courses in Norway this year, just a casual, fourth year in a row that they've gotten like 100 courses there. They're awesome. They're bonkers for disc golf in Norway. It's amazing. And so just continuing to see those trends of new spots where disc golf is popping up. And also just knowing that there's still so much more potential. Like, we still don't have disc golf in India, right? Like, there's not a lot of disc golf being played in China. Even like, we've seen a lot of disc golf growth in Uganda this year, but, like, look at the whole continent of Africa. There's barely anything there. So I think it's just, again, that potential that there's so much more there that we're still just scratching the surface. And, like, each of these different, like, locations has different challenges. It's really interesting to hear about, like, in Colombia, they're building their baskets by hand. in the country there, because it's like if they were to import them from the States or something like that, it would like double their costs essentially. And so just, learning about what it takes to grow disc golf in different countries, it's not like a one size fits all thing. And so I think that's where it's just really interesting to see how it's going to develop everywhere. It's super exciting.
Well, Steve, so great to see all this. We really appreciate you coming on the show. We'd love to ask you some more questions over in our subscriber bonus segment, Inside the Circle. You willing to do that?
Yeah, awesome. And if I could, like, one more bump real quick, like,
please.
The kind of the underlying theme of the sport of the report this year is like the stuff that you as a player, if you're listening to this, the stuff that you're inputting on UDisc, like it's going back into your community. So like, I know it's not always like your favorite thing to take out your phone or whatever and track you around, like guilty. I know not everyone's going to always do it, but it makes a difference. Like ask Josh, look at the stats.
Activity rounds. I do them all the time.
Thank you, Josh. Yes. Activity.
Yes.
You can just push the button on activity round and go and play, and you don't have to worry about your phone. And like, I know it sounds like we're just trying to get more people to use UDisc, but this is the reason. Like we're trying to get more people to use UDisc so that we can get more people, more courses. So that's my stump speech. Go put your rounds in on the app. Thanks for having me, guys. Appreciate it.
Much appreciated. Steve Hill, marketing director at UDisc, with us here on the Upshot. That's going to do it for today's show. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll sign off with Steve here with us. We will be back next week. We'll get everything rolling with the season preview. We're going to do off-season grades. We're going to get you ready for the Spring Flight Open. Disc Golf Pro Tour season begins 1 week and a day from today, and we've got All-Star action a week from today. So we'll do that too, Josh. We got to make some like All-Star predicts.
For sure.
For Josh Mansfield, I'm Charlie Eisenhood saying so long. Thank you for joining us, and come in, join up, and get into the Discord as a subscriber. You can hear Steve and us talk right now, and you also get access to all of our past Inside the Circles and hey, Rapid Reacts right around the corner next weekend. So for all of us here at Ultra World Disc Golf, thanks for tuning in, and we'll talk to you next week.